Good afternoon to everyone also from my side here. I sincerely hope that you have enjoyed these first two presentations by Ridango and Sixfold, and we're now going to continue now with our panel discussion on topic of sustainable trends in planning mobility of people and goods. My name is Anett Numa, and I work as a digital transformation advisor at the Estonia Briefing Center. But now to get to the topic here. One of the most difficult environmental and social challenges is transforming the mobility of people and goods. And this sector is in a process of changing completely drastically. And we can't even predict what is going to happen in the future. But speaking about the real numbers in this sector, mobility will increase as more people and goods will move across towns and across the globe. Just bring it out some of the numbers to you. In 2030, the annual passenger traffic is expected to exceed 80 trillion passengers. You heard it right, 80 trillion passengers, which is 50% increase compared to the year of 2015. And the global freight volumes will grow around by 70% compared to 2015. In addition to that, 1.2 billion cars will be on the roads, which is double than we have today. I have together with me here two companies whose hard work has a growing potential to improve the lives of millions of people and the environment and the quality of life, and at the same time, it can also help to minimize the effect of the climate change. Thanks for your very interesting overviews of your solutions here. I will gladly now go more in details with your solutions, where both Ridango and Sixfold has been developing. And Argo, I would actually like to start with you here. So Ridango has established a solution for public transport with focus on ticketing payment and real-time passenger information systems. You have been implementing solutions in Estonia, in Sweden, in Denmark, Lithuania, even in Ukraine. And clearly, they are very fundamentally different countries. Maybe you can just bring it out some of the most surprising differences and challenges between implementation processes in these different areas.
As our customers is usually from public sector, it means that all our contracts are awarded through the public procurement. So it all basically the differences start with the procurement process itself. There are very different rules and regulations in different countries for language use, for different documentations you need to provide, etc. So the differences start already there. If I talk about the implementation itself, then obviously if both sides put enough effort to the project, then basically it is quite similar from country to country because the solution itself is quite similar what we offer. It is a serial product. But these are the ones I would bring out now.
Would you say that the implementation is easier in a country where the digitalization percentage is a little bit bigger in a way, or if the infrastructure is like ready for this kind of system?
Well, today the infrastructure for our solution mostly means actually the mobile network coverage, for example, because all the devices and others we bring from our own solution. But let's say it of course helps because there are then people who understand how the system should work, and it is easier to talk to them. And of course, very important is also what are the people's habits in the country? How do they buy tickets? Are there vending machines? Are they used to use mobile applications already? So it varies very, very largely from country to country.
I would move over to Tõnu now. You are the co-founder of company Sixfold, which is Europe's leading provider for visibility services. And you already helped the world's biggest companies and carriers and the customers to get up-to-date information on the estimated delivery times and see also their shipments in absolute real time. We know that in 2020, when the pandemic hit the world, so there were many queues at the European borders, and of course we saw a very significant distribution with delivery times as well. But Sixfold was a game changer there, and came and helped many different countries, and of course also the carriers in a way. Maybe you can elaborate this a little bit more in details and tell our audience, how did you support countries and carriers by the time of pandemic?
Yeah, this was a free product that we created over a weekend, actually, a good example of how hackathons can work. And therefore it was not a rollout country by country, but instead we built something based on our data, the massive streams from hundreds of thousands of trucks, and visualized the congestions on the borders, how many hours a truck should expect to wait there, what's the length of the queue. And we didn't need to contact any government, we didn't need to roll anything out. We just built the product and it went viral. Logistics people, governments, journalists, general public just found it. It was very simple, and they adopted it in their process in various ways.
That's great. And then we were so thankful when you came up with a solution and we could see that this actually influenced this entire delivery process in a way.
A cool factoid there. European Commission is still a user of this system, even though now things are much better in Europe.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll never be back in a position where we would have to struggle with the queues at the borders.
I think so too.
Yeah, and thanks for your solution, obviously. But Argo, now talking to you, we had participants today here from many public institutions who are responsible for organizing the entire transportation system and also ticketing payment systems in their countries, in their cities, municipalities. What will be your advice for them how to be a smarter customer? So when they do the procurements and that kind of things, or when they urgently look for solutions, how they could be more demanding customers so that you could deliver better. Do you have any experience, or how do you educate your customers in a way?
Yes, I would definitely recommend that before they would come out with a tender itself, they would actually have some sort of a technical dialogue with the vendors. I think the vendors bring to the table the understanding the experience, what is available, where the world is moving, what are the solutions and possibilities, because sometimes the wishes of the customers and the actual possibilities are not in line. So I would definitely recommend that. And also the second thing I think they need to pay attention is that during the whole process, not only the procurement, but also the implementation itself, that the authority itself would put enough effort to the project, because it will pay off a lot. Sometimes we see that it's a huge project, there are tens of people from our side working, and there are only 1-2 people from the authority side. But we also need the feedback, the testing results, etc., etc. So they need to put in effort.
Yeah. What about you, Tõnu? Speaking of educating your customers, do you do anything like this as well, that you give some kind of feedback or saying like, okay, this is what you should need, so you should ask these things from us?
It seems that our customers are similar in a way. Large organizations in private sector, enterprises, maybe the difference is that they are spanning countries and continents, but again, the success of each customer depends heavily on how much investment they put into it in time, attention, and pre-work, pre-sales, business consulting with us.
All right. Jumping back to Argo now. Predicting the changes in public transportation in the future, which direction do you see the public transportation changing? Or how to change the mindset of people, but like for making them use a little bit more public transportation than just their personal cars? Or are there local municipalities for front runners here, or do people have to be the demanding part for the changes from the bottom up, or how do you feel about that?
It may depend from country to country. If we talk about it on a basis of Estonia, then I actually believe that the authorities should be the leading part. I think from bottom up, Estonians are not that good for demanding something, but rather following the lead. So I think really the spokespersons and mobilizing the communities, etc., this should come from the authorities. But whether public transport is changing, like I said already before, I see it on one hand, it needs to become more personal. So it needs to be suited for me, for my personal needs. So I need to use it when, where I want this kind of personal touch. On the other hand, because of the urbanization, we need to develop more kind of mass transit options like metros or bus rapid transit, and these would take the heavy load of the commuters. And then it's the question of first mile and last mile. And as I said, maybe we need to learn walking.
But have you ever been working together with different cities or countries that you see that in this city or in this region, like the people are demanding ones, like that they are looking for solutions that it works that way around, like?
Well, it is usually a scope for the authority, so we are maybe not in that close connection with the people in this region. But I know that in Sweden, in many cases, the authorities listen very carefully what people are saying and do all kinds of studies and tests and ask their opinions. So it works in Sweden well.
But then providing full transparency among Sixfold customers, consumers is one of the key strengths that you have. What kind of data are your customers able to track compared to the other providers that are providing a similar solution that you are? What's the value proposition of your company?
The difference comes mainly from where we started. Unlike our competitors, we started as a tech and data science company, so we approached it from a different angle, and then we teamed up with specialists of logistics field early on to add the second half to the game. And in the end, how we differ is mainly the extent. By now, just in 3.5 years, we've grown to be the biggest network of live vehicles in Europe, and now growing beyond. So the technological pace or the feature sets, they are getting closer and closer. In the end, it's a network game. Who has the widest available data on the ground?
All right. Now, going back to you talking about the COVID-19 crisis, I have a question to you, Argo. How much has the COVID-19 crisis changed the behavior of our travelers? What have been the most outstanding trends you have seen post-COVID time?
Yeah, the COVID has changed a lot, actually. If we think about our customers, which are public transport authorities usually, then they have lost 60-70% of passengers compared to the pre-COVID time. And they are responsible in a way that they actually ask themselves, people not to use public transport because it comes from the government and it is the same thing to do at this moment. But what we see also, and what probably become a new de facto standard post-COVID, is all sorts of contactless solutions. So most of our customers have stopped any ticket sales on board, so the drivers don't interact with passengers anymore. So there are contactless bank cards coming to. They were already a trend before the COVID, but now it has kind of increased the pace a lot. And we see that these kind of methods will become a new de facto standard.
Even talking about myself, I used to use public transportation very, very often before the crisis, but I was very scared to do so when the numbers were increasing, obviously. So it can have a real impact, but I'm also super happy that no one can buy the tickets again from the bus driver anymore, but you have to swipe your card. So it makes also everyone's life a little bit safer in a way. But continuing on the pandemic time, I also have a question to Tõnu, because providing an absolute real-time visibility of operations is very essential. But when we talk about like in the light of the crisis, like COVID-19 pandemic, the stakes are even higher. And it can mean the differences between crucial medical equipment being available or also stuck at borders, or essential products being available in supermarkets as well. So Sixfold is helping many worldwide companies to improve their supply chain processes during pandemic. Can you give some of the examples regarding this?
I think a good example here would be how medical equipment producer Semperit was one of the first companies who embraced our border map last year when the real stress from the congestions was the highest, and they used our information to plan ahead and avoid those congestions if at all possible, because every country has multiple borders and one of them is more congested than the other, and they could then plan ahead and get deliveries done. But thankfully, this isn't a case anymore. Logistics is resilient, and now that the borders are back to normal, I don't foresee any huge difficulties on that front.
All right. But continuing talking about the numbers, as you know, I love to talk about the numbers. The highest number of cars per inhabitants was recorded in Luxembourg, followed by Italy, Cyprus, and Finland. Estonia is holding a position number 6 there. And in 2018, Poland had by far the highest share of passenger cars older than 20 years, followed by Estonia and Finland. And in 2018, the highest shares of petrol-powered cars among the highest registrations were noted in Netherlands, which was 80%, and Estonia followed with Finland with 74 and 74.3%. How do we get these countries that are on top of the list to change their trend to use public transportation instead? Do you see any changes of behavior already in recent years?
Well, I was surprised actually to see that Netherlands is in that list, because Netherlands actually has a very good public transport network. They are really fond of trains, and trains cover the whole country, and everybody travel with trains. So probably it has to do something with petrol cars rather than overall number of cars per capita. But if you think about Estonia and Finland, then both of these countries are sparsely populated, meaning that there are rural areas where public transport cannot provide the service which is always available. So I think it is normal that we continue using cars. It's not maybe the question how to get people out of cars to use public transport in rural areas, maybe in the cities, yes. But in rural areas, maybe we can just join forces. Maybe there are some community services that people can share cars when they go to, I don't know, take their kids to the training or go grocery shopping or whatever. So perhaps there are ways to do that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the choices. Also, a little reminder to our audience, you also have a chance to ask your questions, so please to post them into our Q&A section, so I could also ask your questions from our speakers here today. But I will continue with one of my own questions here. Talking about the climate part and the environmental issues, as discussed in the beginning, the climate change and the environmental impact of human activity present very clear challenges for the whole world. The new digital technologies play a very essential role in pushing sustainable growth. Many companies and countries are seeing sustainable and greener solutions, giving very competitive advantage and looking for a way to reduce CO2 into transportation sector. How does Sixfold solution support the European Union Green Deal goals?
That's an easy one. So a little example. If you're using a carrier that has to bring their truck from 100 kilometers to bring your goods to the destination, and then they don't have another customer lined up there to bring back the truck together with the goods, then you have a lot of empty mileage racking up. And the further we get with digitalizing the European supply chains, the more we see that carriers are chosen more optimally, more locally, and they have more options to bring back the truck together with the goods. It's not a direct connection between what we do and how carriers are then reducing emissions. It's it's a total network effect then in the end, reducing emissions by dozens of percentage points.
Now, as we already have received a couple of questions from our audience too, I'm going to jump to you, our audience questions too. What is your biggest challenge when implementing a solution or even turning it to design stage? GDPR or other regulations, government, public, or lack of interest, or something completely different?
It's definitely not GDPR, because this is kind of done already. I mean, we are fully compliant with that. But I think the biggest challenge would be to have a good dialogue with the customer. I mean, as I already pointed out, there are quite many still authorities who just write down everything they come up with, and then they expect that the vendor should implement it all. But it's not that simple. So it's always to kind of have the creative dialogue before the actual tender. And of course, it can and it needs to include multiple vendors, so gather the knowledge from the market, and then come up with a solution design which is suitable for this region, but also doable by vendors.
Yeah. The other question that I also very much love here is the pandemic did lead us to home office, obviously. What effect will this have on the long run, as we learned that home office actually works? Do you expect people to accept longer commuting distances, as they might only travel from time to time to their employers?
It is difficult to say, obviously, because this is a new situation for all of us. But I definitely see that the pandemic, first of all, has taken us back at least few years in the process of attracting more people to public transport. So we are set back by a few years at least. And on the other hand, I do acknowledge that this is actually true, that we probably in the future will travel less for the work. I mean, if I think about myself, then I used to travel in average once per week abroad. But probably this will not happen, because all our customers are also now used to have online conversation. They weren't before. So this will probably have an effect in the future as well, yes.
All right. Now I have the very last question to you, as otherwise we're running out of time here. Speaking now on a very personal level, how does your transportation habits look like? How do you commute between work and home? Like maybe starting from you, Tõnu.
It's a long distance from bed to table. And I expect this to be much more common, not only for me, but for the wider general public, that we will reduce the commute, everybody of us, quite significantly, who can work from home. It's gonna stay not as crazy as now, but in a good way.
Yeah, I have also adapted already to the situation. So I work from home on many days actually throughout the week. But if I need to commute, I actually use a car. I have to say this, because I live outside of Tallinn, and it takes about 20 minutes for me to drive to work, but it would take around an hour with the public transport, and this is where the difference comes from. But hopefully, as we talked about, all the kind of suburban areas will have a better connection in the future as well, so I can switch to public transport. I'm otherwise a big fan of trains, by the way.
Yeah, if we would have them working a little bit more, and I would say not efficient, but more like quicker and so that we could go from one place to another a little bit quicker.